Alright guys, after watching the last video, the causes of the American Revolution, we're going to get started in talking about the fact that the colonies had had enough. They were sick of the king. They were so tired of what he was doing. Okay, one of the big reasons is because he kept doing all those taxes. So if you remember from the last video, the king did so many taxes and it was stressing out the colonies. So they were doing protests, the Sons of Liberty, the Patriots were protesting. One of the protests that they did was the Boston Tea Party. So we're going to pick up our story kind of from there and talking about moving on into the revolution. Okay, so after the Boston Tea Party, the king was super mad and he did what we call the Intolerable Acts. So the Intolerable Acts was a couple of different things. He closed the Boston Harbor so that nobody could go in or out of Boston for trading. Okay, he made one of his loyalists leader of the towns and he closed down town meetings. He also instilled the Quartering Act, which means redcoats could live in your house. Okay, so he did a lot of things in these intolerable acts that really pissed off the colonists. So the colonists, what they do is they meet together. So for the very first time ever, all the colonies meet together in Philadelphia to decide what to do with the king and his intolerable acts. So what they end up deciding, they talk about a lot of things, and they decide on three different things. Number one, they decide to keep protesting. Number two, they decide to boycott, which means to stop buying England's stuff. And number three, they decide to start creating colonial militias. Now remember, a militia is a small army. So what this means is every single colony created a very small army just in case England attacks. Okay, now in order to do this, in order to create a militia, you need weapons. So all the colonies started to collect weapons and hide weapons. Now, what this did, because all the colonies in the First Continental Congress was deciding to collect weapons for militias, the king heard about this. So the king sends his redcoats to Lexington and Concord. Now he did this for two reasons. Number one, he wanted to find those weapons that they were hiding. Number two, he wanted to arrest two Sons of Liberty leaders, Samuel Adams and John Hancock. Now, before the redcoats could get there, two midnight riders, Paul Revere and Wentworth Cheswell, rode through the night to warn the militias at Lexington. So they warned the militia. So the militia got ready. The militia was known as the Minutemen. They could get ready super fast. So these Minutemen militia guys, they get ready. They go to Lexington. They're ready to fight. But sadly, there's only 70 militiamen. And there's 700 redcoats. So they stand in the field and they're just staring at each other, waiting for the redcoats to make the first move or the militia to make the first move. Until finally, someone fires a shot. Okay, this is what we call the shot heard around the world. This shot, nobody knows who fired it, okay? But what happened after that first shot is a bunch more shots were fired, and the battle of the Revolution, the Revolutionary War, officially begins. So this is when the fight to win independence officially begins. Now, obviously, 700 guys easily beat 70. Redcoats win, and they move on to Concord. But Paul Revere and Wentworth Cheswell have already been there, and they started warning a bunch of the militia guys to get ready again. So this time there's 2,000 militia. So there's 2,000 people from the colonies who ambush the 700 redcoats. This time the redcoats lose and they retreat. So this is known as the Battle of Lexington and Concord, and it's the first battle of the Revolutionary War. Now, because of this battle, the colonies know that they need to meet together again because now people are dead over this whole militia thing and the whole frustration with England. People have been killed, and they know that the king's going to be mad about it. So they meet together to decide, what do we do? So the first thing they decide to do is something of peace. They write a letter to the king asking for peace and to listen to their grievances or their problems. Remember, this letter is called the Olive Branch Petition. What did the king think of the letter? He hated it. He calls the Continental Congress, the guys who were meeting, he calls them traitors and he threatens to hang them or to execute them, to kill them. So the Second Continental Congress has to decide, well, what do we do now? The king has totally hated our plan of peace. He doesn't like what we're saying. He doesn't want peace. So the only other real option is to say, don't tell me what to do. And in 1776, the Second Continental Congress declare independence. So Thomas Jefferson writes the Declaration of Independence. This declaration does several things. It declares freedom from England. So now they're saying, we are no longer colonies. We are the United States of America, and we don't have to listen to the king or to England. They also proclaim that governments should be protecting people, and specifically should be protecting people's rights, especially their inalienable rights like life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Inalienable rights are rights that are given to us by God and cannot be taken away, and these were first thought of by a guy named John Locke. And Thomas Jefferson kind of stole his ideas and put it in the Declaration of Independence. The last big thing that the Declaration of Independence did was state the grievances or the problems that the colonies had with England. Now, after the Declaration of Independence was written, well, after the Declaration of Independence was written, quite a few people were really scared of this idea because remember, you still have loyalists who want to be a part of England, and you have patriots who don't. So patriots are obviously people who would love the Declaration of Independence, and loyalists are people who really do not like the Declaration of Independence. So this guy, Thomas Paine, he was a patriot. He wrote a booklet called Common Sense. And what he was saying is, it's just common sense to separate from England. They treat us badly, they don't protect our rights, they don't care about us, they take our money, they tax us without representation. It only makes sense to separate from them. Why would we want to stay with them? So he's trying to convince Americans that it's an okay thing to separate and declare independence. Okay, so the Second Continental Congress declared independence, making them separate from England. So the United States is officially created in the year 1776 because of the Second Continental Congress and the Declaration of Independence. Now, when they declare independence, the colonies are no longer the colonies. The colonies are their own country, the United States. And what they really need in 1776 is they need a plan for government. So their first plan of government, which is what a constitution is, their very first one was called the Articles of Confederation. Now we're going to kind of look at the Articles of Confederation a little bit. Now one of the main purposes of the Articles of Confederation was to not be like England. They were scared that they were going to make a government that was like England again. And they were like, why would we do such a thing? So instead of making a strong national government, instead they make really strong state governments but a really weak national government because they didn't want a government like England. So here's the setup of the Articles of Confederation. Congress can't tax. There's no way that Congress can tax or get money for the national government. Congress has to ask the states for soldiers, so there's no national army. The United States doesn't have a national army at all. There's still little militias, but there's no official national army. The Congress cannot solve problems because there's no Supreme Court. That means that if two states get in an argument, nobody's going to say who's right and who's wrong because there's no Supreme Court to make that decision. There's only one representative for each state. There's no leader. There's no president. So there is only one branch that controls the whole entire country, and this is the Congress, the group of representatives known as the legislative branch. There's no judicial branch. There's no executive branch. The Articles of Confederation made the national government extremely, extremely weak, and they wanted to make the state government stronger. Now, here is our timeline, just so you kind of have a full understanding. We have the Declaration of Independence in 1776. You have the Revolutionary War. Now remember, the first battle was before the Declaration of Independence. So it goes Battle of Lexington and Concord, Declaration of Independence and the Articles of Confederation, and then the rest of the Revolutionary War, which we'll talk about in the next video. Now also in 1776, they write the Declaration of Independence and also the Articles of Confederation. And in a later on video, you learn that Shays' rebellion will help the United States government realize that the Articles of Confederation is really weak and they need to write something new. So this is all of the events leading up to the Revolutionary War and the actual battles. So in our next video, we're going to talk about the battles of the Revolution.